Thank you, everyone. Today we have a kind of different meeting because nobody is in their place where they usually are. So I'm here in KubeCon. Matt is also in KubeCon here, sitting next to me, and some people from the Canada group are in Toronto. So Ragan is with everyone around him there. And then, so welcome everyone. Hope you're having a good time. And we are having a good time here in KubeCon. It was pretty fun. Well, probably be a quick meeting, so we have a few things to share with you, and then as usual, hear what you have to say or whenever on the environment. Usual agenda. This is the team. I think most of the team is close to Ragged there, and the rest of us are in different places. So things we shipped in the last month. So we shipped a new version of OpenFGA with small fixes. I want to go over them, and a release candidate of our support for conditional relationships that I will be demoing today, and also our CLI, VS Code, and SDKs are starting to support that new feature, and also ship new versions of the Java SDK and Python SDK. So the OpenFGA release is mostly fixes and things about telemetry. And so we fixed a bug in the check API with experimental cache enabled. That was an important one. Also fixed security fix, made a security fix, and we have database metrics now that are exported to for matrix infrastructure. So that's pretty cool and useful. And let's see what the most fun part of the meeting today. We will be showing you what we've been doing with conditional tuples. So I need to stop sharing this and share my Visual Studio Code. So what I'm showing here is there's a sample stores repo that is in the GitHub organization for OpenFGA that now has traditionally it had the examples that we have in the playground, like entitlements, expenses, GitHub, and Google Drive. And we added a few more now that use this new feature that lets you define what we call conditional relationships, similar to ABAC features, conditions that you can add in the model. And let's start with the simplest ones. This is one of them. One use case for that is I want to get access to specific and give access only from a specific IP range. And what I can do is I can add, in this case, in the organization, what we do is we define a policy where all the members in that organization need to comply with a condition, which is this one in company network. And the company network function will check if the user IP is in the company network range. And this tuple is conditioned. So when you write this tuple, like here, we are saying that all the members of the ACME organization have this policy linked to the ACME organization that their IP address needs to be in this range. And then we have a document that belongs to a specific organization and is a viewer of the document. But the condition here is that to view the document, you need to be a viewer and also need to comply with the policy, with the policy. Okay? So if we look at the checks here, if Anne wants to access the document from an IP address that is in the range, she'll get can view true. But and in list objects would also work, right? I can list all the documents that Anne can see, given she's in this IP address, she'll get the documents. But if you try for a different IP address that is not in the range, then the can view will be false, right? And list object will be empty. So we can here model. And you see that both are possible. Okay. So if you're not using the CLI to do this kind of things, you should, because it's pretty useful to validate models and it's not hitting any FGA server. So it just kind of works kind of in memory and it's pretty fast to test this kind of things. Any questions about this specific use case? I mean, example, I covered a few more, but if you have any question about this, feel free to ask. In general, you'll see there's a pattern here that we're using, which is we can define these policies that are like at some higher level, and that they relate all the members of that entity with a specific condition. And then for all the entities that are related to that one, we can add this the policy from the organization, right? So you can easily build generic policies that can apply in any condition you want, but then adding that and at the right level. Another scenario that you can implement is, then we had an example for entitlements, and that was more, can you use a feature or not? But now that we have these conditions, we can check for entitlements that have certain usage limits, right? You can have this number of collaborators in a project, or you can sync this number of rows, or you can view pages with specific that are not older than 7 days. This is inspired on the Notion pricing model, right? So we try to model a subset of those conditions for different plans. And what we're saying here is that you can have to have a feature, you can be a subscriber of that feature, or some features can require to also comply with a condition. Okay? So if we look at the way we define the plans, we see the free plan, and that has this feature can view page history, right? And the condition needs to be that the limit on the history days needs to be set. Can invite collaborator feature in the free plan that has a maximum collaborator limit of 10. Okay? Can sync rows in the free plan is 100. And then there's a feature that is not conditioned because it's Boolean, which is can use basic page analytics. And then for the pro plan, the limits are different, 30, 100, and 2,000. And then you can, depending on which the user belongs to different organizations, and based on that, they are going to have access to different features, right? For example, Beth, with a pro subscriber, should be able to see pages which are more than 10 years old, because in the pro plan, the limit is 30, right? And but check here, and only can see 10 because the limit of that plan is up to 10. Okay? So the idea is you can do that with all. Yes, go ahead.
So with those conditions or that context, like, how would you know that, like, I guess, would you send in like the age of the page or something like that, and then it would say, oh, this user doesn't have authorization to view it?
Yes, if you see, that's a good question. If you see here, we have two parameters in the condition, okay? And when we write a tuple, we are instantiating one of them. So the fact that the free plan can only allow you to see pages that are 7 days old, that is stored at the plan. It's stored in FGA. The fact that this specific page has this age, okay, is sent in the request, or the number of collaborators that you have, right? So you will need to get that data from your system, how many collaborators does this plan already have, before calling us. So we are gonna know just the static limit, but not the real value that your system has, because you cannot store that in FGA, right? So like this plan has 10 collaborators. Yeah? So, but that is the idea. You combine data that is in the tuple with data you send in the context. In the first example, the data that was in the tuple was the company IP range, okay? And the data that we sent in the context was the IP of the user, right? And in this case are the limits of the collaboration. I should explain that better. Thank you, Andrew, for the question. And so another example that is also interesting is when you are doing a bank transfer, right? And in this scenario, you have an employee of the branch of the bank and a customer of the bank, and they can have different policies to make bank transfers. So, and to make a bank transfer, you need to be or the owner of the account or the account manager, and you need to comply with the transfer limit policy. And the policy will be, you can make the transaction if it's below a specific limit, or if there's a new limit that it was approved somehow, okay, as part of the approval flow of the transaction. And then we're saying that customers can transfer up to $100. So we are kind of binding this transaction limit here in the tuple. Account managers can transfer up to 1,000. Then we establish a relationship between the users and the account managers. And then Anne, who is a customer, she can transfer $10 because it's below the limit, and can transfer $1,000 if there's a specific approval for going higher than the approved limits. But if she wants to transfer 1,000 and the new limit is 0, she will get false. Right? And the same thing with the manager of the account manager. Depending on the limit they try to transact, they will get different results. For this use case also, in general, what's going to happen is in your application, whenever you want to go above the transaction limit, you're going to probably challenge the user with a specific MFA factor, right? So send an SMS or approve a transaction in your phone or something like that, right? And that is, at the end of the day, it is going to be part of the access token that you're going to have when authorizing the call. So you can send some values from the access token, like the factor they use for authentication, to confirm that and add that to the condition, right? So I can only go above my right limit if I approved this with a push notification or with a specific method for approving it. So that's also pretty cool. And I think the last one we have here is, so we have the temporal access one, which is I want to give access for a user to from a specific moment and up to specific duration. Okay, so you can do that by adding like a grant time and grant duration, and then you can compare the current time with that combination. So here we are granting access to N. We granted access to N to this document starting at this date for 1 hour. If we want to try to access it like 10 minutes later, it's going to be true. If we try to access 2 hours later, it's going to be false. Okay. So and then you can also use list objects, all the objects that I can use, given that this is the current time. And the last one we have is, this is more about you having data in a specific attribute in document. For example, the document has a status draft, okay? And I want some users to see that depending on the status of the document. So you can, members of this group can see draft document, members of the other group can only see published documents. So here, what you have is at the organization level, can access docs, members of a group with specific condition. And the condition here is the status is in the range of allowed status for that group. And when we write the tuples, we say members of the content group can see documents in draft and published states. Members of the marketing group can only see documents in the published states. And then when you call the check, you send the status of the document that you're trying to see. And depending on the conditions, you'll get access or not. So that is basically the idea. For this scenario, there's one piece that is interesting, which is given that the attributes that you want checking are in the documents, if you want to do list objects and get a list of documents, we cannot know that, because we need to know the status of each document, right? To know if we can list it or not, right? So for that scenario, we are thinking of doing something like I'm gonna just need to stop sharing something else, because that is in the blog that we ship this. Sure. So the scenario is like this, right? The one I was showing you. And if you want to to list all the objects that a user can see, I would need to know the status of all of those objects, which FGA doesn't have. So right now we're returning an error saying we don't have the full context, but we want to return something like this. So given that we know you have access to document 1, but it will depend on the status of the document, we will send you like an expression that then you can transform to a SQL query on your side or whatever query you need to do on your side, right? So we just evaluate the list of documents you have permissions with, but you need to now filter those down more based on the attributes that are part of the conditions. That we know the conditions, but we cannot evaluate. So we are calling this partial evaluation, and it's something we plan to do on top of the feature that we have. Any reactions? Do you think this is going to be useful? Not much. You have some use cases you think you can apply this to? Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
No, actually, I think that solution is interesting. Just because we always have the problem where you may be able to determine whether someone is authorized, but you still only want to acquire the data that is truly legitimate for that user. Like you don't want to query more than what is required. So that partial evaluation allows you to return a, I guess, what's the best word? A condensed version of an expression that could then be converted into a where clause. But it does mean that whatever is evaluating that expression then also has to have access to all those data points, right?
Yeah, we need to have access basically to the fields that we are returning as part of that condition, right? So in this case, the document status, right? So we need to, when you write a query, you need to access those fields on your side. Do you think, Andrew, that for the scenario, the example I showed for entitlements is something that could make sense for the product you're building? Like you probably have different plans, right, for AI?
Yeah, for sure. Like we have different plans, and there are different, you can, like, for example, on the free plan, you can't access recordings or something like that. And so we could definitely make that a condition of the plan instead of having to like write all these extra, like have that logic in the application, you know. Because we do have that logic in the application right now where somewhere there's an if-else statement of that checks to make sure that they're on a specific plan before we send that data back. So
makes sense. Cool. Okay, so this is our what's next. Right? We've been working in the things in progress for a while, like for a couple of months. We are almost done with most of these things. So hopefully we can jump to the next set of things. You can look for more details about these things in the roadmap that I'm linking here, or you can find it there. So if you have any feedback or comments or questions about this, feel free to reach out, because we are going to start working on those pretty soon. So a few things, these are more things that happened during KubeCon that we are proud of, so we're going to just mention them. So there was a challenge at the CNCF level to see what was the project that could get more badges for a few challenges on the security posture, right? And we were the only project in the entire Linux Foundation and CNCF that got the 5 badges, which was pretty cool, right? And if you go now to CLO Monitor, there is a site that shows like some of these metrics. You see we are one of 3 that they have 100%. And then one of the other 2 is a specification. So it's easier to be compliant with security if you don't have code, right? But the other one is a certain project. And we also have this scorecard level is pretty high compared to other projects. And the salsa level 3 is kind of the highest level you can have in managing signatures and provenance information in your projects. So we are pretty good on that stance too. Thank you, Andrew. And then, so we had a couple of presentations. One that was pretty cool was like a John, which is sitting a member of the team, presented with a CNCF ambassador. That what they did is they replaced the RBAC implementation in Kubernetes with OpenFGA. Okay? So like you can model instead of using the way it's working today, which is based on files and static doing runtime, right? You can dynamically change those things, and the use case there. So you remember the last time we have Martin demoing the Keycloak integration. So after this meeting finished, someone came from the audience asking me if they could kind of add a user in a group in Keycloak and have that reflected in their permissions in Kubernetes, which is now with these two things that components we have, that is kind of possible right now, right? So you will be able to manage your Kubernetes permissions from any ADP that you synchronize data with FGA. This is so Lucas, who is this ambassador, he's been talking with a lot of people in the Kubernetes and the world to try to kind of make this more official. Right now, this proposal he has, right? But hopefully that will happen. And also there's a similar effort from Canonical, and they are using OpenFGA to handle authorization on LXD, which is their container platform they have, right? So, and those things, actually, you can combine this with the Kubernetes piece. Right? So you can run Kubernetes inside LXD, and then you could share the same permissions and roles. So if a user is an admin, can be an admin on both things without you defining it twice, one for each thing, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We are also working closely with Canonical to see what are the chances, the opportunities for them to also integrate more deeply across all of the products and infrastructure things. It's also pretty cool. And then we have a presentation with Maria. Maria is probably next to Rejekts now in Toronto, where we showed also how to use OpenFGA. This was more an introductory talk for OpenFGA, how you use it for making Kubernetes authorization. But it was a good crowd, and we got a lot of interesting feedback. It was fun because I was modeling this document management thing we always do for demos live with the CLI and Visual Studio Code. And I made a couple of mistakes, right? Like saying organization and instead of organization, Acme. And we got people from the audience saying like, no, you're making a mistake, which means for me, it's good because you never know if people are actually understanding the model, like what you're doing. And if they pick up a mistake, they mean that they are following it. Okay, so that was pretty good too. And so that's it for today. So if you have any comments or questions about the future or whatever challenge you're facing and you want to discuss with us, feel free to speak up now.
Hey, I had a quick question just about I think maybe it was last month you all mentioned that some of your upgrades, if you wait to upgrade for a long time, like it could cause downtime with database migrations. And I was wondering what the timing will be around those. Like, are there specific versions that could happen for? Or
so when we ship right now, I recommend you that you migrate to the latest one. Okay. And I think if you do that, because the one that needs the new structure is the release candidate for AVAC, okay, which is the one that is in a separate branch, and then you can test it independently, right? Actually, you can do all the tests for these AVAC features with the CLI without even using the server, right? Because the CLI has those features already. Right? So but yeah, so that one will be the one that will require downtime, or it's not downtime, but for a moment you will need to kind of run a migration that might lock some tables, right? And you might get an error when you try to write. That will be basically the issue, right? And but if you do it incrementally, that shouldn't happen. Anyway, we're gonna write this down better, okay? So you know what is the steps you need to take before migrating to the one that we have that problem, right? So whenever we launch that, we say, okay, first, please migrate to these other ones before doing this, if you want to do it without time.
Cool, yeah. Thanks.
Good point, I guess. That needs to be clarified well in our release notes for that version. Perfect. Okay, so thank you, everyone, and feel free to reach out in the community channels, and we'll see us again in a month.